Watch this.
The political struggle and splintering of Idaho's Republican Party is not a new topic, but it has broadened a bit. Outside influences are pitting Idaho conservatives against each other for not being conservative enough. But how far outside are those influences? We've talked a lot about bonds and levies over the past few weeks. It's probably because, well, the May primary is coming up next week. But do you know the difference between the two, or what it takes to get one passed? After today, you will. What better way to celebrate Mother's Day than to poke fun at her a bit? After all, you've probably spent a good amount of time poking holes in the little white lies she told you. So we're going to spend some time sharing some of those. I mean, since her day was yesterday. The lists of litmus tests to be a Republican lawmaker in Idaho appears to be pretty long. You have the Republican Party platform, where any sidestep from that policy could and has gotten legislators censured. Such missteps or votes based on their constituency have earned Republicans the label of rhino. And you have the litany of political ads of late calling the most conservative of Republicans not conservative enough and misrepresented as voting against a noble cause of some sort that they pick. But now those campaigns have begun to expose the infighting, even within what some might call the fringe of the party. Misleading ads and flat-out lies are running rampant these days because of spending from out-of-state political groups. And the phrase eating their own, it's not a new one within Idaho's GOP. We've highlighted this a few times over the last couple of years, including the cannibalism bill, which is worth mentioning because this story also involves Representative Heather Scott. But as Andrew Bartlane learned, these inroads from outsiders lead to the Speaker of the House pointing to him as the target, who isn't exactly thrilled to be in this position. And this time, call is not coming from inside the House. Or is it?
If you thought politicians only gathered for the session to fight,
We had disagreements, but we weren't disagreeable.
then you've just started paying attention.
Colleagues have never seen anything like the last two election cycles.
State House leadership says it's now time to pay the price.
No, it just means they're a bunch of damn liars. That's the problem with this whole thing.
And House Speaker Mike Moyle
This crazy election cycle.
has all the receipts.
Nobody's going to tell Mike Moyle how he's going to vote.
But they will tell people how he voted. Make Liberty WinPAC passed out these flyers in his district.
Falsehoods. It's lies, misrepresentation. It's sickening.
Anti-gun claims go a long way in a two-way state.
Go in my office. There's a Defending Freedom Award from NRA. I'm one of 3 people in the state that's ever got one of those things? Give me a break. But I want people to understand this is out-of-state, dark money from liberals, and it's wrong, and it's going to destroy Idaho.
Actually, they're libertarians. And last week, we traced some of the PAC's funding back to a Freedom Caucus state lawmaker in South Carolina.
I don't even remember contributing. It's a subsidiary of the Ron Paul group, Young Americans for Liberty. They're a group of activists that push for conservative causes.
But in Idaho, the PAC's pushing out conservatives.
Just keep your feet grounded in your own district and watch the craziness.
Representative Julianne Young's among the targets.
Yeah, I just finished my 6th year of service.
She's squaring their sights over a 2023 bill to remove inappropriate books from Idaho libraries. She voted to remove the books, but the mailer lies and says she wants kids to have access to porn.
Just so outrageously false that I can't believe anybody would even think to say it. They must feel that there's a benefit to them long-term somehow to take out a conservative incumbent in order to get a very liberal candidate in the hope that maybe the pendulum swings again and they get someone who's more libertarian in that seat. That's the only way that it makes any sense.
Or rather, Young chose to shake hands with the wrong leader.
Speaker Moyle was sort of the catalyst or the inciting event, right?
Daniel Walters is a reporter to Investigate West.
Basically out of the blue, got to set this recording.
He obtained a leaked private conversation between Idaho Freedom Caucus co-chair Representative Heather Scott and Idaho State Freedom Caucus network head Maria Nate.
People, we have work to do. You need to start looking at your legislators.
This is Maria with her husband Ron. He's the head of the Idaho Freedom Foundation. And in the leaked recording, Representative Scott supports Speaker Moyle's leadership, while Nate wants him out.
This other sort of big elephant in the room. Maria says, hey, Heather, this could put a lot of our partners in really frustrate our partners, and that ends up including the Young Americans for Liberty Foundation, which in this recording, Maria says is about ready to drop like $1.1 million for their candidates to try to help their candidates get elected.
1.1 million is twice the figure Senate Pro Tem Chuck Winder estimated after the PAC's ads attacked him last week.
Well, they're one of the largest ever to spend. They're particularly one of the largest from out of state to spend.
And they're now losing favor with conservative colleagues.
I have heard from individuals who have donated to that group who are outraged. I know that many of my conservative colleagues in the legislature have reached out to that group and expressed their frustration with what's going on.
And that paper trail, that leads back to the speaker too.
They wrote a letter to me, supporting me and others, supporting me, saying Moyle's done a good job.
Just not good enough to keep all those to the right by his side.
They feel like Mike has not used every tool in his toolbox to try to crush the left or to push forward conservative priorities.
I know school choice is a big piece of it. It's a big reason people are upset with you. Julie Yamamoto stayed the chair of the Education Committee. You say, I'm doing what's right. Why is that right?
There was ways around her. That school choice bill didn't just die in education. It died in rent and tax too. If it was.
You added Judy Boyle to that committee. Was that the reason you did it?
Did it not help them get enough votes that they should have been able to get out of that committee? The point being is they didn't have the support yet, and we'll fix some of that if I'm back.
But in politics, there's a price to pay for coming up short.
If money can buy these elections, we're all in trouble.
And the conservative camp has spoken.
The fringe phrase.
You're either with him.
He's done a lot of great things for the state of Idaho that are kind of being ignored.
Or against him.
If these outside groups figure how to use their dark money to control our elections and force people to do what they want, we are in trouble.
There's a lot of different pieces attached in this recorded conversation that neither Nate nor Scott knew they were involved in. And in that conversation, Brian, these dots start to sort of get connected in how all this pieces together and how it comes back to Moyle largely of people that want to work with him and on the Freedom Caucus side, further right side, and those that say, no, we need someone better. He's not doing everything we want. Get him out.
Now, we've heard this recording, just to put that out there. We've had it for a couple of months. We have chosen not to use that recording in today's show to kind of illustrate what these two were talking about. But as you learned today, it's also under investigation by ISP because of how it was obtained.
That's what we heard from Investigate West, who initially broke this story earlier today regarding this recording. That's the organization that Daniel Walters works for, who we interviewed. And yeah, it seems that there is a criminal investigation regarding this call, how it was recorded, and ultimately who would be distributing it.
And there's a lot to unpack with that call and with everything else that's around it. You've done a fine job doing it. But just to kind of reiterate, this Young Americans for Liberty. First of all, let me start with Young, Representative Young, saying that she is against or is for pornography in libraries, which isn't there, but also for that. She was the one who came up with the original bill, 666.
Yep.
And wanted a $25,000 fine against librarians because of that.
It's just a flat-out lie on that ad.
Yes. Okay, so Young Americans for Liberty, they want to put $1.1 million in this. This is the same group that is supporting marijuana legalization in other states and even possibly here in Idaho.
Partially what Moyle said as well is there are certain things he's not going to compromise on or entertain, and he said drugs is a big piece of it. I think he was more speaking to, fentanyl dealers, talking about mandatory minimum laws and how he's going to be strong on that. But I imagine marijuana is a similar piece too. He says he's not going to collapse on that. I imagine they don't like that.
You mentioned dots. Lastly here, let's connect these dots. Maria Nate. You mentioned she is the husband or the wife of, Idaho Freedom Foundation president, Ron Nate. They gave Moyle an F for his freedom score, by the way. The Idaho Freedom Foundation did. She is the member of the Idaho Freedom Caucus, the state director of the Idaho chapter of that is. She managed her husband's legislative campaigns for a couple of years. She was a delegate to the 2020 Republican National Convention. And possibly biggest, she is the secretary of the Idaho GOP, the state party. She's the secretary. She answers to Chair Dorothy Moon. I did reach out to Chair Moon to ask what she thinks of all of this, about Maria Nate being involved in this, being supporting of and promoting Young Americans for Liberty. Have yet to get a response. So
we'll wait and see.
We'll wait and see. There's a lot more we could do with this. We'll see if we get to some of that later this week. Thanks, Andrew. Okay, so we're down to 8 days until Idaho's primary election, a chance for voters to choose which party candidate they support politically and which bond or levy they want to support financially. Those are primarily centered on education, bonds and levies. And despite the recent influx of cash to Idaho schools from both the legislature, whether that's surplus or otherwise, there are still several of them out there to be decided this time around. Bonds and levies, what's the difference? And what does it take to pass either one? Joe Paris has those answers.
School districts across Idaho are asking voters to approve bonds and levies to help improve education and facilities in their community. Bonds and levies, they are different and even have different requirements to pass depending on the specific ask. Let's start with bonds, and they are used for buildings. Bonds, buildings, keep it simple. And they also are used for major infrastructure improvements. And the question for taxpayers will be, do you approve a property tax increase that would pay off a bond and the interest over a significant amount of time, maybe 20 or 30 years? Bonds, they are a big ask, so they need a supermajority of 2/3, or 66.67%, because, yes, they would deal with your property taxes for a long time. Levies, on the other hand, have some intricacies. Most levies are for operational considerations, maintenance, and for learning supplies. Things also like staff salary needs, classroom materials, even safety improvements. These are also paid for by property taxes over 2-year terms. There are some subcategories, and the major one, though, is supplemental levy for maintenance and operations. Basically, it's a 2-year levy that renews itself every few years, if approved by voters, and then those really need a simple majority, 50% plus 1. So those are the simple levy questions. There is another subcategory, though, for levies that you may see on your ballot. It's called a plant facility levy. And voters in Fruitland, Idaho, for example, they do have one this cycle. Plant facility levies can be an alternative to bonds. In a sense, they are easier to pass. They go for 10 years, but cash flow for the projects are annual installments instead of a major upfront bond. They are used for facility updates and repairs, and the percentage required to pass one, it depends on the specific ask. The different thresholds are 55%, 60%, or 66.67%, the supermajority. Again, depending on what the ask is for.
And just to hop on that real quick, the bigger the ask, the higher the percentage. Of course, The election coming up a week from tomorrow. You can check out the voter guide at ktvb.com.
And school districts, like we talked about last week, they're asking for these bonds and levies because they don't get the money from the state that they do need to fulfill a budget.
Yeah, the legislature has thought for decades that the local community should put in a little bit too.
So that's what happened. All right, thanks, Joe. All right, so Chad Daybell's murder trial moved quickly today. 7 witnesses on the stand. Jurors heard and saw more gruesome testimony about Tylee's remains as well. It's a good time to step away, though, if you do not want to hear those details. Morgan Romero has today's 4-in-1.
There were 7 witnesses to kick off week 6 of Chad Daybell's murder trial. Chad is accused of murdering and conspiring to murder his first wife, Tammy, and his current wife, Lori's children, Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow. FBI forensic anthropologist Dr. Angie Christensen told jurors she determined Tylee had sharp force trauma. An FBI firearms and tool marks forensic examiner told jurors that trauma was consistent with a stabbing action and a chopping action, although he said he couldn't figure out what specific tools were used. For the latest on the trial, head to ktvb.com. Court picks back up tomorrow morning. The May primary election is next Tuesday, May 21st, and the deadline to vote early is this week. Check with your county clerk's office for early voting locations. For a full breakdown of what's on your ballot, text VOTE to the number on your screen, 208-321-5614. We'll send a link to our voter guide directly to your phone. You can also check out our Spanish voter guide at ktvb.com. Boise Parks and Recreation announced its splash pads, mister pools, and interactive fountains will be open from Memorial Day to Labor Day. You have 7 locations to cool off in the City of Trees. Head to our website to find out where you can find one. And that's the 411 on the 208. I'm Morgan Romero.
Friday, we asked you for some fables your mom told you growing up, probably to get you to do something or to stop doing something. Well, we're going to do something and share what you shared with us. And we may have a lot more in common than you think. Didn't get those texts sent in to us last week? That's all right. Still got a little time left in the show to do it today. Or you can text us about anything on today's show. Send them to us. The number is on your screen, 208-321-5614. Include your name and the hashtag #the208. My viewer comments here. Okay, so the brunches have all been digested. The baskets of hanging flowers have all been hung, I assume. The obligatory phone calls have all been made. Hope everyone had an enjoyable Mother's Day yesterday. It's a day to reflect on all those things our moms have given us: life, love, and advice. We left last week asking you to share some of those words of wisdom, as unhinged or as white you later learned those lies to be. So today we're going to air some of them. The old wives' tales mothers seem to throw around like pearls. Here are some of our favorites. Some of these may sound familiar, like Murray's mom, who said, "If you cross your eyes, they will stay that way." Here's something your own mom may have said at some point: "If you pout, the poop bird will sit on your lip." According to Terry's mom, with no reference to the Audubon Society. How can cows stand sideways on a hill? Bill's mother put it this way: shorter legs on one side. As for your legs, you better lift them up going over a bridge, or it was bad luck, said Susan's mom. This one's a little specific. My mom swore I was named after the Everly Brothers song, "Wake Up Little Susie." I was born in 1955. The song came out in 1958. This one, a little Idaho specific. My mom told us when it thundered, it was angels rolling potatoes in heaven. Made thunderstorms not so scary, said Diane. Moms are always worrying about what we eat. If you swallow those seeds, a watermelon's gonna grow in your stomach, said Carrie's mom. And what we don't eat. Nancy's mother said eating toast crusts would give her rosy cheeks and curly hair. Apparently crusts were a catch for a lot of kids, even our own meteorologist, Sophia Bliss, who was told if she ate the crust on her sandwich, her hair would grow longer. Meanwhile, Frank's mom was more worried about Sophia's choice for a career. You know, if you continue to lie, you'll grow up to be a weatherman. And Kathy's mom told her she would go blind if she watched color TV. According to my mom, that all depends on what you watch. How about this elaborate tale? Doug in Boise was a thumbsucker way into adolescence, so his mom took him to meet a guy without a thumb, who they convinced to tell Doug he lost his thumb because it was in his mouth way too much as a little boy. Needless to say, Doug did not suck his thumb off. Heather used to get bloody noses as a kid, so to ease her fear, Heather's mom told her it just meant she was growing. And it worked so well, Heather learned to welcome them and even pass the prevarication onto the next generation. That's how it works. You just pass it on to the next generation. Whatever your mom told you, you pass it right along. You want to send a few more to us, maybe before the end of today's show? That's fine. We might squeeze a few in there if we got some good ones. You know, some light, fun, appropriate. The number again, 208-321-5614. Again, if we get a couple in, we'll share them at the end of the show. Happy late Mother's Day.
Really amazing in a long time that the Northern Lights actually made it down to where some could actually see it. It's kind of really unique, especially when you think about Boise and the topography. The mountains here just to the north kind of tend to block it off, but still strong enough storm that it puts some south here into the area. Now, speaking of storms, we had a weak cold front. That's what you call it. That's what moved through right through here. And we had some lightning strikes. If you look over here in Caldwell, we'll start it out again. That's this afternoon. There's 2 lightning strikes there. If you look down here at Melba during the afternoon, there's a couple lightning strikes there. And then we had a few just right up here below Idaho City, just north of Boise, right in this area. That's it with the lightning strikes. They're very isolated. And unless you're in one of those 3 places, it's likely that you didn't see much out of it. But down here for Twin Falls, everybody saw lightning and thunder. Look at this. Down here in the Twin Falls area, look at all the thunderstorms and the lightning strikes that moved through for today. Still getting some rain showers out there for today as well. And when you move out just a little bit farther, we could just show you here that it's starting to clear up here to the west. So we had some of the gusty winds for today, some concerns of winds to 50 miles an hour in Twin Falls, and still for tonight could be rather strong. We had winds above 25 miles an hour today. Expect winds about 10 to 20 miles an hour throughout most of the southern positions for tomorrow. And as you can see out here, we've got a forecast of more sunshine. Join me at 6 o'clock. We'll have the complete details and show you the 7-day also coming up.
A lot of feedback today on Idaho Republicans eating their own in the legislature. Rod has no sympathy, though, for these Republicans. As he says, they're complaining about extremist dark money. They all welcome these groups like the IFF when they thought they brought them more power. They knew exactly who these groups were. Another one along those lanes. Did Moyle misspeak? Well, actually, a different one. But this one said, did Moyle misspeak when he referred to the dark money as coming from outside liberal groups? He did say that, and as you heard in the story, Andrew corrected him and said it's actually libertarians. There is a difference between liberals and libertarians. I thought a lot of these attacks were coming from ultra-right-wing groups. Please clarify. So that is the difference. These attacks are coming from a lot of libertarian sides as well, not just that. There are some liberals out there that are pushing some of these mailers against conservatives, but these that we're speaking of today, from libertarians. These are some of the things that these people heard growing up from their mom as well. Like Steve and Eagle, I want to end on this because eating cottage cheese will grow hair on your chest. How many times have you heard something about that? Anything is bound to grow hair on your chest. And it's usually your dad who said that, though, right? Am I right about that? Eat your carrots and you'll see better at night, says Cindy. But that actually is true. That's not a lie. That actually is true. Carrots will help you see better at night, not see in the dark, but they will help you see better at night. My mother said the white spots that would occasionally appear on my fingernails due to telling lies. How many white spots does she have on her fingernails when she was telling you this? Because that would indicate that as well. My mom told me my dad was my dad. 23andMe said otherwise, Lynn. I'm sure that was a great Thanksgiving dinner that year, wasn't it? I'm sure lots of things got settled. Thanks for sharing that, Lynn. Finishing your green beans will give you long, straight legs. Thanks, Mom. I got to be 5'3". And lastly, we've all heard this one. If you sit too close to the TV, you're going to go blind. We've all heard that one, right? Like this close, maybe? How about this close?